We also have interpretation available today in Mandarin, Cantonese, and Vietnamese. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see an interpretation button, and you can click on that and choose the language you would like to listen to for the duration of this event. Very big thank you to our interpreters who are joining us today. Lastly, we wanted to set some ground rules for today's conversation, as we will be speaking and thinking about people's personal and lived experiences and discussing complex topics. We ask that as you participate via the chat, that you practice active listening and presence, that you come to this with an open mind, and that you treat each other with care and with openness. We do reserve the right to remove participants or end the events if there are disruption. And in the event that that happens, we will follow up with you afterwards. And with that, welcome. And I will pass it along to Jen Amico Kaplan.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Amico Kaplan. I am an economic development planner at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and I'm also the project manager for the Regional Immigrant Entrepreneur Storytelling Project. I wanted to quickly introduce myself and thank everybody who is attending our event today, an exciting completion for the first phase of our project and a chance to hear from our project partners, their work. Before we get started, I did want to acknowledge some special guests who are joining us today. I see that Senator Keenan and his staff are on the call today, so thank you for being here. And I also want to acknowledge Lorraine Say, who is one of the small business owners we interviewed as part of Daphne Shu's film series, Quincy from a Distance, is also online today. Thank you for being here, Lorraine. Before we get started, I realize that we need to address some difficult topics. And Claudia, I might ask you to actually move forward a slide. Thank you. The first is that I want to acknowledge that it has been a full year since things drastically changed in this country. And for many of you, this has been a trying, painful, and growing year. The second is the topic regarding the increased reporting and hate crimes against the Asian community that we have seen and many here attending today have experienced in the past year. We know this is coming at the heels of a horrific and tragic incident in Georgia. I want to share some thoughts from our agency. The last year has seen an increase in racist and xenophobic assumptions, behaviors, and reported attacks against the Asian American and Pacific Islanders who are wrongfully perceived as responsible for the COVID-19 outbreak. While it is easy and accurate to blame a portion of this increase on falsehoods spread by the president and his administration, former president and his administration, it's important to recognize that this misinformation is also deeply rooted in the historical legacy of racializing infectious diseases against people of color. Viruses do not originate from, nor are they spread by, specific racial or ethnic groups, and any such misconceptions should be strongly rebutted. We have seen the impact of this prejudice in our region through both reported and unreported hate crimes against individuals and the toll it has taken on the Asian American business community. We also recognize that the Asian American business community was in fact instrumental in limiting the spread of the virus by choosing to close businesses, adopt and promote social distancing, and the use of personal protective equipment before such measures were required by the Commonwealth. MAPC is committed to combating this fear and racism through education, advocacy, and ongoing collaboration with organizations that do important work in this field. Many of these organizations are partners on this project, and you'll be hearing from them today. MAPC does not tolerate any harassment nor xenophobic behavior from staff, community partners, or any member of the community participating in events managed by or affiliated with the agency. That means today and any events moving forward. We have resources to understand the history of racializing infectious diseases and the impact that xenophobia has had on the Asian community, should you choose to educate yourself, and we hope you do. We also have links to organizations that we know are having active conversations about supporting the Asian community. We'll share these links after the event. You obviously cannot click on the screen here. And I just wanted to provide a reminder that today we have interpretation services in Mandarin, Cantonese, and Vietnamese, and those interpretation channel is turned on, and please use it if you feel you need to. I'd now like to turn things over to Claudia Zarazua to introduce our partners.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I will now introduce our partners. Just give me a moment while I organize my screen. And for those partners that are here, if you can just wave your hand to acknowledge, and we'll let you speak when we get to the Q&A. So I will first start with Philip Chong he's the Executive Director of Quincy Asian Resources, Quarry. David Stowe, he is a member of the Board of Directors of Quarry as well. Ben Heyer, CEO of Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center. Gina Ha, Director of Community Programs and Design at ACDC, Asian Community Development Corporation. Debbie Ho, Executive Director of Chinatown Main Street. And lastly, Dabney Shu, artist and filmmaker, director of the Quincy from a Distance film series. Thank you, everyone. I will now, or I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Claudia Zarazua, Arts and Culture Planner at MAPC, working with Jen Kaplan through this project. I will now hand it over to Jen.
Thank you, Claudia. And I'm actually going to need you to switch the slides. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much. Before we dive into the panel discussion today, I wanted to share the results of the first phase of the Regional Immigrant Entrepreneur Storytelling Project and what it has been about. And before I do that, I am going to take a step back and introduce you to who the Metropolitan Area Planning Council is. We recognize that for some of you joining us today, it may be the first time you're hearing about us, and for that, we are excited you are here. We are a regional planning agency that serves the people who live and work in the 101 cities and towns of metropolitan Boston. As an agency, equity is part of our mission, equity in planning. And for us, that has manifested in this project of focusing resources towards underserved or marginalized groups to make improvements in the overall system. We, of course, have not done any of this alone, as you have just been introduced to our project partners. This past year has been a project in collaboration with a network of partners, all who run incredible organizations and make beautiful art that serves and represents the Asian immigrant community within the greater Boston area. None of this work would have happened without them. This has been a regional project, but also a project to understand stories that required us to go deep into a community's history and context and neighborhoods. And that's why the first phase of this project took place in Quincy, which was perfect because actually the seed of this project started in the city of Quincy. In 2019, the Economic Development Department at MAPC was working on a small business plan with the city of Quincy. It was during this time that we started our collaboration with Quincy Asian Resources to do outreach to Asian small business owners within North Quincy and Wollaston. What we heard during that time was that Asian small business owners were not accessing, nor did they find it accessible, municipal services. And we knew that with the pandemic by early 2020, the situation could be exacerbated as relief would be needed to address the impacts on the small business community, both in terms of aid and relief, but also the xenophobia and racist rhetoric that was coming from the federal level and permeating the community. The Economic Development Department partnered with the Arts and Culture Department to bring attention to this issue and started a regional multi-phase storytelling project, with our first phase being in Quincy. This project itself has consisted of different parts, and I'm going to give a brief overview of them today, and we will have a final report released following this event, and we invite you to share feedback today because we would like to incorporate that into the final report. We did a data analysis which investigated the landscape of Asian immigrant entrepreneurs across the region. Claudia, could you move over one slide? Thanks. And in this analysis, we found that the Quincy and Milton Pumas region, which is public use micro data area, has the highest proportion of Asian immigrant entrepreneurs per capita within our region. The following map shows just where the density of Asian immigrant entrepreneurs are across actually the entire state. We conducted a survey, and many of our partners here in this room and on the panel helped us on this effort. Not only did they help us draft and give feedback on questions, but they did one-on-one outreach to business owners who would want to lend their voices to this process. Many elected officials and state agencies supported us by sharing this information with their constituents. The survey was meant to measure the impact that COVID had on Asian immigrant small businesses. We're going to share some brief results today. We heard from a total of 75 unique small businesses, primarily within the cities of Boston and Quincy. Of the small business owners who responded to the questions of ethnicity and race, 93% responded as identifying as Asian and Pacific Islander. Within that group, over half identified as East Asian, 21% as Southeast Asian, and 2% as South Asian. Next slide, please. We heard primarily from restaurant owners and retail business owners. However, we did also hear from nail and hair salon owners and construction business owners. And primarily the respondents were small business owners having 1 to 5 employees in their business. How has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted these Asian small businesses? We heard that there was temporary shutdowns in the halting of production of sales, but also the need to acquire new equipment or signage and dealing with the impacts of the increase in xenophobia. To respond to this, small business owners reported that they temporarily reduced employment and sometimes had to lay off employees. In accessing aid, COVID relief funding and services at the government level, most responded that they did apply for this aid. However, in our open-ended responses, we also heard that some small business owners did not want or need additional support or had already connected to a community-based organization for that support outside of government services. Moving forward, Asian small business owners will need financial assistance. And this is in regarding to rental assistance, and also they will need assistance and services relating to public health guidelines, protective equipment, and testing services. Can we move over one slide? I hope many of you were able to attend our film screening of the film series Quincy from a Distance, directed by Daphne Shu, one of our panelists and project partners today. I did want to give a quick recap of the films, but encourage you to go to our website and view them. We started working with Daphne last year on a film storytelling project that took place in Quincy, interviewing 3 Asian business owners. Lorraine Say, CEO of Sunshine Travel, who's here with us in this room today. Hi, Lorraine. Jim May, owner of Jim's Hair Salon, and Chris Yi, owner of Hungar Kung Fu Lion Dance Academy. The intention was to dive deep into the rich history of City of Quincy's Asian small business districts and hear their stories. I hope you're able to go to the website and view these films. I think maybe we can even drop some of the videos in the chat, which I see that Betsy already did. Thank you. Finally, we drafted policy recommendations. And I'd like to just start this off by saying that these are a framework for municipal and state government to consider as they address the impact that the pandemic has had on the Asian small business community. These are not aimed at one single city or town or state agency. This is for everybody across the region to consider. There are primarily 3 goals that we divided these policy recommendations into. The first is to decrease the cost of business and increase revenue for small business owners, knowing about the increase in operation costs that need to be helped with relief. The second, actually, could we go back once? The second is to address xenophobia and racism, knowing that municipal and state governments can play a role in combating disinformation through educational campaigns and providing resources for those who have experienced xenophobia directly. And the third is providing services for individual need, because cultural differences, historical discrimination, and barriers to access play a big role in how the larger Asian immigrant community feels about seeking support from the government. I do want to share these policies. I'm obviously not going to share them all. We'll be, again, releasing these slides and also a report where you can view them in depth, but I did want to bring up a few examples. First, within the first goal, in a municipal regulatory context, we recommend that municipalities collaborate with CDCs and CBOs to establish a grant or forgivable loan program for Asian immigrant small business owners. We know that there's an increased demand for financial assistance within the community, and working with a CBO or CDC would allow for special priority given to Asian immigrant entrepreneurs housing the program within the organization. Working with a CBO also means having access to services around language and cultural sensitivity that we often heard from respondents throughout our project on the survey. Those are services that are missing at the government level. If we can actually move forward a few slides. We could have shared this all today, but obviously that's not going to happen. That's okay. Within the second goal of addressing xenophobia and racism, I want to bring up the example of encouraging the state governing body to consider investing in the continued tracking, research, and addressing of anti-Asian incidents. In order to stop anti-Asian hate crimes, it is necessary that we address it at the state and regional level, and track and address hate crimes and the additional research and funding of organizations who hold national platforms are doing this already. Just an example, the California legislators last month approved $1.4 million in funding to combat anti-Asian violence. And finally, within the third goal, in order to support Asian immigrant small business owners in areas of life that intersect with their ability to contribute to the small business community, we encourage municipalities to collaborate with CBOs that are actively working on providing these services, such as childcare, rental relief, food security. And I'm not going to actually go too much into this one because the very organizations who provide these services are our panelists today, and I would like to let them speak to this. So I'd like to stop my presentation there. Thank you, and turn things over to our panel discussion and Claudia.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us up to now. I will now have a couple of questions for our panelists, and we'll then open it up for the audience to join in. We ask that you type your questions in the chat, and then I will draw from there the questions to the panel. First, I will ask the panelists to introduce themselves and their organization before they answer the first question. So it's been a year since this country has been disrupted by the mismanagement of the pandemic. Let's reflect on what that year has been and tell us more about the role you have played as an individual or as an organization in assisting and supporting the Asian immigrant community. I will start with Gina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gina. Again, I'm the Director of Community Programs and Design at Asian Community Development Corporation. What we do at ACDC is invest in working class immigrants and the places they live by building affordable housing, helping families access generational wealth, and helping immigrants access urban planning decisions, like how their neighborhood is designed. And throughout this pandemic, the way that we've been supporting our community is, I would say, a couple of ways. I'll slow down for you, Anna. Thanks. Um, the first is advocating for institutional care. So that means one, making sure that folks are getting access, like have language access to housing and rental relief, and also to unemployment applications. The second, where we know that where institutional access and care falls short, that's where collective care in the community comes in. And ways that we've been doing that at ACDC is focusing, working with about 5 other grassroots orgs to launch an emergency relief. So this was a mutual aid supporting frontline workers as well as undocumented families who couldn't access any public benefits. So no food stamps, like no unemployment insurance, but cut off from work for as long as COVID's been affecting us. And in addition to that, just supporting and distributing PPE for our 400 families in our units, as well as right now working with BCNC to do vaccination outreach and education. One thing I'd like to highlight is in terms of supporting the community and for healing and rebuilding post-COVID is one, focusing on safety. So there's an anti-Asian racism town hall that a lot of us are organizing next Thursday, I believe next Thursday, March 25th. I can drop a link in if folks want to attend. And the second thing is working with small business owners and residents using arts and culture and making a space to have healing conversations and asking them, what do you imagine for your neighborhood or for our community post-pandemic?
Thank you, Gina.
Yep.
Philip?
Hey, how are you? My name is Philip Chong, President and CEO at Quincy Asia Resources. We are a nonprofit immigrant social service agency that's been serving people in Quincy, the greater Boston, and for the last 3 years also expanded to New York City. First of all, I want to thank the MAPC. I want to thank Jen. We've been working together for many years. I also want to acknowledge Senator Keenan. I also want to thank David Zoe, former chair of the board and current board member. He has been working really, really hard with Jen and the team to make this happen. And he's truly a great community partner. And I also want to thank Loing Se, our current board member, and also a community leader and a very savvy business person. Always know how to pivot and making work, and then making work for the community, and also making sure that her immigrant staff have the job to do during this really challenging time. So for Quincy Asian Resources, I mean, I'm not going to go too deep in terms of, the things we do. We pretty much, I'm making the assumption that, we're well known, but let me jump into it. So I'm going back and forth. So we provide wraparound services for immigrants, a lot of Asian and other immigrants community. Our wraparound services, including youth, elders, family, workforce, and cultural events. And since the pandemic last year, we've been doing a lot of unemployment support, helping individuals file the unemployment benefit. One of our signature partners, workforce partners, Brooks Brothers, they first having shut down, and eventually they filed bankruptcy, lay off over hundreds, like close to 1,200 workers that Corey has been supporting. So there's a lot of support in terms of unemployment benefit. We also started helping local business owners to file PPP, and then also the EDIL. That is critical and the lifeline for lots of business owners to continue what they're doing. And the other thing is I don't know if this is a time to talk about that, but something that I remember Claudio sent to us to talk about what we learned through this pandemic. I think what I learned and what Corey has learned is we learn there's different ways to actually serve our clients, or if I can say it in more layman terms, different ways to do business. So we know that we can serve our clients differently. We can serve our community partners differently, and something that we actually have been doing it um, 3-4 years ago, turning the table around that, not just relying on brick and mortar model. We try to mobilize our services in the virtual level at our client sites, at our partner sites, in those type of models. So since the pandemic, we also seen there's a huge need of food security, and the ironic thing is, that wasn't our bread and butter. Corey wasn't the bread and butter for food security. We've been working with Social YMCA in the food pantry to help support the people coming to pick up the food, but that wasn't our bread and butter, and we somehow pivot to help support the food security for the elders and families who got homebound because of the pandemic. So we quickly, at first, as we all know, that during the peak of the pandemic, a lot of people, no matter what level, I'm not talking about just a poverty level, I'm talking about any level that you couldn't secure a delivery schedule, either from
Yes,
Walmart,
and
Peapod.
I think food security is very relevant. Specifically, I just want to give a chance to Debbie to speak about that and the work that they're currently doing.
Yeah,
Sorry, Philip, if we can talk more about that later. I
sure.
just want to give a chance for Debbie to speak on her work
Yes.
on that.
Thank you so much. I'm talking too long, right?
Not at all, Philip, not at all.
Debbie, that's the trouble. For Phil, once Phil's talking, cannot stop. But we will come back to that.
Yes,
Good
thank you, Philip.
afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Debbie Ho. I'm the executive director to the Chinatown Main Street organization. It's an organization which was founded in 1995. And what we do is we provide all the technical services for businesses and residents, along with storefront improvements. We provide grant funding through the federal dollars into the local communities to allow them to, have the ability to afford storefront improvement, which can, cost a whole lot of money. Let's talk about a couple things first, which is Chinatown Main Street. On the start of the pandemic, it came in very fierce. It affected a lot of businesses in January 2020, and I'm sure that most of us who have been going through this process with every person, every resident, every business owner through the effects that have happened through this pandemic. We have served over 70 plus businesses, bringing over $800,000 of funding through PPP and through the state and local city grants for businesses. So that's good. It's good for the businesses. They got some type of funding. They're at a 70 to 80% loss of businesses, like everybody statewide. Thank God they're surviving. And through this, we brought in the Fair Foods program into Chinatown, which is a citywide initiative through the Fair Foods organization. And we provide on a biweekly basis food for anybody, and it does not have, there's no there's no identification on it. It's, you come up, you need food, it's $2 a bag, and you're welcome to it. And we hold no boundaries when it comes to that. And I think It's great for the residents and people who just walk down the street who really don't have the money to buy foods to get the $2 a bag's food. This past week, Chinatown Main Street has forgone the $2 a bag and have been giving it for free now. So again, it's going to be on a bi-weekly basis every Saturday from 11:30 to 1:30. And we're proud to say that we are now working with ABCD. We were awarded a grant to again serve people who are unemployed. As long as they can show some proof of unemployment, it could be from 17 to 65, like myself. You're eligible. You're going to get a bag of food, and we're going to serve. We have a limit of 200 people who can apply and get approved by through the ABCD grant through Chinatown Main Streets, and let's just so happy about that. We got a donation from a company that does imports distribution in Revere, over 300 cases of hand sanitizer for businesses. Any businesses who are interested, needs help, it's free of charge. We got it donated to Chinatown Main Street. Chinatown Main Street took that and donated to the entire community. We set out a big push out yesterday with our coupons that they can come in and get the reimbursed of one case of hand sanitizer, the 2-gallon ones, and it's great. From the Asian, let's say the xenophobia, it's happening. I was interviewed today by NBC regarding what has gone in Atlantic, in Georgia. And and when I heard that they didn't think it was a race issue, I immediately said it was. I'm sorry, I said, because I said, look at it. The man went to an Asian business, killed Asian people, and they killed everybody in there because they wanted the business to fail, which ultimately will fail. So to me, that is xenophobia. That is a hate crime to no end. That's my feeling. But anyways, we work with anybody and everybody, and fortunately, our mission has tilted a little bit because we want to be sure that residents and people here who are lost their jobs get some type of food.
Thank you, Debbie. And let's talk about safety and safety in the community. Ben, can you speak to your work and what you're doing for recovery and a safe recovery?
Sure. Thanks, Claudia, and thanks to MAPC and Jen for hosting this conversation today. Good afternoon. My name is Ben Hires. I'm the CEO of Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center. Since 1969, BCNC has been working in the greater Boston community and beyond, empowering Asians and new immigrants. And our mission is to help them build healthy families and achieve economic success and contribute to a thriving community that we all want to live in. And BCNC provides a broad range of programs centered around education for families, workforce development, family support, and arts and culture for children, youth, and adults. And so in terms of safety and health and wellness, since the pandemic started, BCNC has been really focused on especially one-on-one health and wellness checks to our participants of all ages. And as people began to come to us and in our ability to assess their needs, our staff began to refer participants to resources, in a lot of cases for basic needs, including food access, if we heard from Debbie and Philip, and unemployment insurance. And I think those processes, sometimes can be complex and challenging, especially for people whose English is not their first language. So our staff provided a lot of support in those areas. And we also distributed financial aid and gift cards, for families who were facing health issues or unemployment, or we also support many families with special needs. And we've also seen a 4-fold increase in the number of referrals for mental health. So the anti-Asian impact that Debbie has mentioned and that we've heard about earlier in the presentation certainly has impacted families, employees, businesses. And so at a ground level, we've seen an increase in the terms of case management and support groups and telehealth. And our staff created a website, both in English and Chinese, for some of these resources and distributed translated materials via social media and things like that. And I think, we'll probably hear the importance of language access for supporting businesses. The final thing I'll say is, and I was encouraged to see some images of art, and I think Gina had mentioned art and the importance of that. A lot of the organizations that are on this call today came together to support local businesses in Chinatown in particular, using art, creating a poster campaign, creating public art in businesses, hiring performers and putting them to work, and encouraging people to do socially distanced takeout over the summer. And I think, one of the things that's important is to think about what are the ways that we can creatively help the community heal, both our families, but our business owners. And so that was a great example of using the arts to support our business community. So those are just some of the few of the things that we've been able to do.
Thank you, Ben. Daphne, now that we're getting into the arts and culture, and Gina and Ben mentioned that, can you tell us more about your experience as an artist in this last year and what how it has impacted you, not only as an artist, but also a Chinese Canadian artist?
You don't mean just in relation to Boston, Chinatown, or to Quincy? You mean in general?
If you can tell us like a brief, I know it's been a long year, but if you can just tell us a brief description of what it's been.
Well, okay, so I guess what's the phrase, like wear many hats in this conversation. I used to work for CPA, Chinese Progressive Association in Boston, Chinatown, and I currently still work for the Chinatown Community Land Trust in Boston, Chinatown. And I've had the pleasure of actually meeting many of you all here, like Ben, Gina, Debbie, through this like We Love Boston Chinatown kind of campaign that Ben just mentioned last year, and also through working on the Chinatown like community-led master plan between 2019 and 2020. As an artist, as a filmmaker, the pandemic has, obviously, like without travel, without access to kind of like, I love to film. I love having a camera on me. And if you watch the Quincy from a distance videos, those are all kind of like shot or it was totally made from a distance. So that's actually, it was me trying to, I don't know if it's really that experimental, but experiment with kind of completely allowing the subjects themselves to film and to create their own image or to represent themselves. And that's something I normally would never do. Similarly, in other film projects, I've been using much more found footage. I've tried more like incorporating drawing and other kind of mediums in my work. So that's on, for my kind of art life or artist career. But then I guess within the context of Boston, Chinatown and Quincy, of course, it changed everything.
Thank you. And lastly, David, before we open it up to the audience, we've been talking, like the pandemic has forced us to pivot, like Philip said. Can you tell us about the new programs or strategies that Quarry has had to implement since the beginning of the organization?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. And first, I want to thank you and MAPC, organized this event. And it was great pleasure and opportunity to work with Jennifer and other staffs. And since the pandemic, our organization has changed many programs, transfer from the original program into some of the new program, and some of them from in person to remotely. So I highlight few here. It's not all of it, but and Philip gonna I just highlight few that, for example, we're doing some food delivery, to the senior in Quincy, and we also recently we are doing the vaccine program. So we organize and we help the local, non-English speaker register the vaccine, and then we also will help from Noreen, the Sunshine Traveler, provide bus. We shuttle these elder from Quincy to the Fenway Park to get their vaccine. From last year, we've been doing many things last year because of the pandemic. We actually working the project with the Secretary of State for the Census 2020. So we do remotely, by phone call, phone banking, and we also doing this initially because it was initial year last year. So we do another voter education, flyer, and we do phone banking and to encourage Asian voter to get out to vote. The Quincy during this November general election has over 8,000 Asian voter turn out, which is highest ever. Compared to 4 years ago, it's only 5,000. And compared with 8 years ago, the presidential election was only 3,000. So we have 8,000 people turn out on this year's election.
Good job, David.
So it was I as a board member and as a Quincy resident, I work very close with Philip, and support this organization, and we doing many things that we never done it before. But I think it was very rewarding, and it was very helpful to the community. So maybe now Philip say a little bit more.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
I
David.
don't think I'm allowed to say it. Don't open the floodgates, please, because.
Thank you, David.
But can I add something really quick? I also want to thank for the whole census and all these civil outreach. I want to thank ACDC. I want to thank Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center. I want to thank the Main Street. And there's a lot of collaborations and support. So we're very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are grateful too. I will now open it up for questions from the audience. I don't see anything in particular. I'll just give it a few minutes. If anyone has any pressing question for the panelists or anything that you've heard related to the project, please let us know. In the meantime, if anyone wants to jump in, I do have a question. As you know, MAPC is a regional agency. We work not outside of Boston and Quincy, where your main hubs are of support. Can you, either one of you, tell us more about the work you're doing, if any, outside of the city and Quincy?
Yeah, this is Philip.
Hi, Philip.
Actually, I have a board meeting after this, and I'm going to speak the whole time. So I don't know why I'm being so volunteering. We also been serving the town of Randolph. Since 3 years ago, we started a partnership with the town, with the they call our ICC Randolph Intergenerational Community Center, and then also with Randolph Public Schools. In Randolph, there's a anecdotal in terms of data is about 15% or a little bit more for Asian population, and then also close to 40% of person of color, African American, Haitian, and Cape Verdean. So we've been doing a lot of youth programming, lots of outreach. Since the pandemic, we're also doing food security, and then also for the PPE. And moving for this coming year, we also partnering with, actually, I might not be able to announce it yet. But anyway, we're gonna do more. We're gonna do more food security work in terms of better understanding the systemic and racial inequity through food security work in Randolph. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Philip. Ben, did you want to jump in? I saw that you unmuted.
No, I didn't. I didn't
Okay.
actually have anything. Thanks.
Okay. I see that we have a couple of questions in the chat. Daphne, if you can briefly tell us about the videos and the audience, And I will just preface by saying that the videos have been public for only about 2-3 weeks. So it's hard to measure the impact yet. But if you have any thoughts on that, Daphne.
Hi. I was gonna say that maybe Claudia and Jen, you're better suited to talk about how they're being used. And who was here last time for the screening, or if you have data about who is watching them and if they're being watched.
We don't have data yet. Like I said, they've only been public for a couple of weeks. I think, Jen, if you want to speak to about the reasoning behind using video as a medium.
Yeah, I'm happy to, and I see that there's other questions coming in as well, which makes me happy. Yes, so I think behind using video as a medium, I think I mentioned this a little bit when I was presenting, but we wanted to dive deep into the history and the neighborhoods of Quincy. And we knew that film is a medium in which you can really think about all those layers. And I think that was even furthered by, Daphne, when we started to talk about how to film these, and your idea to have the small business owners themselves film their lives. And so you were actually literally transported into what it means to be Jim operating his hair salon right now, or Lorraine giving her tour of the Quincy area. And so I know that was really important to us, and I think it is very sometimes, it's not something planners are often used to doing. And I think it was important that we did this work. And Daphne, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I can add something. I think for me, I knew going in that you had already, like MAPC had been working on the small business plan, and that there was this quantitative data, which is typically what planners would use to try to understand a community. But I also come from a more like a qualitative research background. And I think that doing these interviews with the business owners and getting to know them a little bit more and seeing or understanding them as humans or as people, I was interested in how that could supplement this research and how this could be a more interdisciplinary project on the whole. So that's why I didn't really have an answer for you, Pam, at first, because I think that it was always supposed to be kind of like the beginning of a conversation or a way to engage differently with community members, and that it would be seen in conjunction with these policy recommendations ultimately. But I hope that they do. I mean, for me, and for many of us here probably on the panel, like we're probably very familiar with Asian small businesses, and having worked in and lived in China, or being, Chinese Canadian or being Asian American. But then potentially for those of you who aren't as familiar with these kind of ethnic neighborhoods, or you don't speak the language and whatever, I think it's a way to understand people beyond numbers and beyond maps.
Thank you. That's a great way to summarize that. Amy, I see that Debbie jumped in trying to answer your question. I will just read out loud Amy's question. Amy, can people comment on what can be done to improve services to people who need help? For example, unemployment applications. And can anyone comment on the needs of undocumented Asians?
Yeah, can I just jump in for the unemployment? So I've been assisting with unemployment from day one, since March of 2020. What I have found is that the Department of Unemployment Assistance has, because it's an online thing and you can't go face to face, people have to provide everything from A to Z, your social security card, your Massachusetts ID, your either passport or your permanent resident card or employment authorization card. So I have quite a few people who have encountered that issue with the unemployment assistance agency. And those who had been getting unemployment insurance has been vetted as people who are collecting unemployment illegally. Number one, people are unable to read what's online on their unemployment in the inbox. So whoever is doing or working with these people who are applying for their weekly benefits are not reading the inboxes. So the inboxes required A to Z identification, and I guess people had neglected to read up on it. And what they've been doing is the unemployment has noticed that, and no responses from the claimant. They had cut off all the claimants who did not respond, and they're demanding the payback. I can't even tell you how many people who are immigrants who just don't know how to read, write, or speak the language are having problems. So I've assisted, I don't know how many people here already with that issue. And it's funny because I must have sent that same person, I must have sent it 5 or 6 times, the same information, and they have yet to iron out that issue. The Department of Unemployment Assistance has such holes that just nobody's paying attention. And what they'll do is, if you call the unemployment assistance office, they'll tell you they're going to refer it to an adjuster. And so that adjuster, I don't know how many cases that adjuster has, maybe 100 to 1,000 cases. I have one lady who hasn't received unemployment since November of 2020 till now.
Wow.
And it's like,
Thank you, Debbie.
we have to all, I think, do something about this
Definitely.
agency that's issues.
Debbie, this is Jen. Senator Keenan is on the call and has just messaged me that he would actually like to share some information regarding unemployment. Sasha, I don't know if it's possible to unmute Senator Keenan.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Great. Well, thank you. And thanks for doing this. This has been really interesting and informative. I know a lot of work went into it. Thank you. And Daphne, I haven't had a chance yet to view the films, but the film, I'm hopeful to do it tonight. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's going to be great. Just quickly on UI, as Debbie mentioned, there are definitely some holes in the UI processing system. And I know that my office receives calls every day on UI, and some of them are related to language issues. But the problems are even bigger than that. And as if they couldn't get any worse while getting better, let me convey this, that tomorrow in the State Senate, we're going to take up a UI bill. And one of the provisions of the bill is that those who received unemployment benefits will receive a credit or be able to deduct those payments from their taxable income. So they will not owe income tax on their unemployment benefits if they meet certain income guidelines. And recognizing that there has been some issues relative to language, Senator Jalen from Somerville has filed an amendment that will make the Department of Unemployment Assistance basically convey eligibility, the availability of the insurance tax relief, eligibility, and criteria for it, that there's going to be a lot of direct outreach to communities of both those things, eligibility and what the criteria are, and that they will have to do that on their website and in a very conspicuous manner, and that it will have to be made available in multiple languages. So I just want to say that that while it's going to get a little bit more confusing because now there's a tax issue related to unemployment compensation, which may require some people to file amended tax returns if they've already filed. The goal is to have all that information available in many languages. That's the purpose of Senator Jalen's amendment. My guess is, although you never know, my guess is that that amendment will pass. And what I'll do is I'll have a conversation with Senator Jalen tonight to talk about whether, other things can be done, not only just in relation to the tax credit, but to the application process and the processing of claims themselves. So Debbie, thanks for highlighting that. It's certainly a problem. We're taking one step in one area, and maybe we can take a bigger step based on what you presented today. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm just looking at the time. It is 4:30. If you would like to stay a few more minutes, we don't want to take too much of your time. We do have want to hear from Gina and Ben about the work that I see that they've been very active in the chat, and I want to see if they want to share their thoughts with the rest of the group.
You want to go, Gina? I'll just say a few things. I think there have been some great questions in the chat about other ways we can support businesses, and I just reiterated the community engagement through arts, community engagement through many different organizations who've just, had, sort of running clubs who've wanted to do something to support businesses and raise money. I think one of the silver linings from the last, year has been, the resiliency and the engagement from people all over. And I know there was, I think, an earlier question about, what's been happening or what's going on outside of the urban centers. And I think people who live outside of, Boston and Quincy and sort of our downtown areas have been concerned, right? A lot of those folks have been continuing to work from home and are not coming in to the city, and then not been able to support their local businesses that they normally would have lunch or, go to a show after on a Friday night or something like that. And, those folks have reached out to, I think, a lot of us, and reached out to, actually, they actually don't know who to reach out to. And sometimes they're going to come to community-based organizations who are still in the center of the city and help them figure out ways that they can support local businesses. So I think I think people like many of us who probably on this call who are not in Boston or wherever right now, do reach out to some of the community-based organizations that are on this call, because they can help connect you in ways that may not be obvious.
Thank you, Ben.
I was just highlighting a work that another community org in Boston's Chinatown was doing called Asian American Civic Association. They're launching a mentorship program to support entrepreneurs and pair them with more experienced business folks who can help them navigate all the stresses of the pandemic, which has been awesome. And just to go back to someone's question, I think it was Amy. One of the questions was what types of services are needed for folks who need unemployment. And I would, just to cast that a little broader, the small business owners, the restaurant workers, the self-employed and self-contracted workers. I think three main things I want to highlight as needs are: one, language access. That goes to, UI, PUA, applications, as Senator John Keenan talked about, but it also goes to like appointments on websites to access state vaccination centers. Like those aren't translated right now either. And so in a breadth of ways, language access has been an issue. The second is tech access. A lot of the applicants that we work with just have a phone, and to apply for all these benefits, you need to submit a lot of documents. We all know from doing our taxes. Hopefully you have a little bit of time. But having no computer and printer at home makes it really difficult for folks to apply and access funds. And then the third thing I would say is addressing the hate crimes and mental health issues, as Ben and other folks on this call have talked about. Having ways that, so for example, in our relief fund, we explicitly ask folks about their mental health and how, if they've experienced racism and hate crimes. And a lot of folks don't think about sharing those things. They're calling because they have an immediate need of just making the paycheck. But having more comprehensive wraparound conversations that aren't just about urgent care and direct relief, but like long-term healing and space in the community has been really important.
Claudia?
Yes.
I wanted to share a couple of other ideas, some that are pretty recent, and in terms of, I guess, the policy recommendations and some of the supports that small businesses might be able to receive for I guess, some of our electeds and for folks who are civically engaged. So I want to send kudos to maybe anyone who is from the Quincy Office of Planning and Community Development. Just this week, I think Philip played a big role in supporting this event that they had on Monday night, where they had a small business marketing workshop with 3 Asian women business owners and immigrants. And one of them spoke about being a registered or certified a minority and women-owned business. And it was really helpful to hear, I thought, the benefits that come from being certified and having that sort of recognition. And I think, it's great. And the person who spoke, I think, was more coming from kind of a white collar business. So I wonder where there's opportunities or needs for sort of more working class immigrant small businesses to understand what those opportunities are and getting that support, because it seems like, as we know, there's a lot of interest and there's a need for, state and municipal entities to support, minority business-owned immigrant businesses. And then the other thing I just wanted to put out there is that just today in the Boston Globe, I saw, it might have been earlier, an article around a diversity catalog that I think originated at a municipal level from the North Shore. And I thought it was a really great idea that, a municipal level initiative where all the minority or women-owned businesses could become, again, similar to the MBI ideas, that there could be one place to go to understand where these businesses are, what they do, what services they provide, and how people can reach out to them. And I think in a lot of ways, as we've talked about the We Love Boston Chinatown effort and the kind of the initiative that we did, the CBOs or the community-based organizations were sort of playing that role. But it would be great, I think, if the municipal and the state level and other entities could think about those kinds of initiatives too. I think it could go a long way.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Betsy, for putting that link up. I will now acknowledge that Representative Chan was on the phone, I think. I don't know if he's still here, but I will also want to thank him for joining us. I want to thank Senator Keenan again for joining us today. I would also like to thank all of you in the room, Daphne, Ben, Gina, David, Debbie, and Philip, for joining us today and sharing more of your experience and expertise in this. I would also like to thank all of the MAPC staff that is joining us in the room and then in all the behind scenes helping us plan this. I would also like to thank our funder, the Bar Foundation, and remind you that this event is being recorded. We will be posting this on our website, and we'll be sending you a list of resources that have been mentioned today, along with the policy recommendations presentation. Jen, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Claudia. I know everyone is heading out, but I also wanted to thank our 3 amazing interpreters, Maple, Anna, and Duyan, who provided interpretation for our event today. Thank you so much. I know we ran a little bit over,
Yes.
so I really appreciate it. And I think that concludes things. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a good day.